If your camellia has stopped flowering and just sits there through summer looking like a plain green shrub, you've probably assumed the interesting part of the season is over until next winter. That assumption is exactly what causes most camellia problems. Because right now, in July, while there isn't a single flower on the plant, your camellia is doing something most gardeners have no idea is happening. It's already building next winter's blooms. And almost everything gardeners do to a boring summer camellia, feeding it because it looks like it needs a boost, letting it sit in full sun because it seems tough enough, watering inconsistently because there's nothing visibly at stake, directly damages flowers that won't even show up for another 5 or 6 months. By the time you find out something went wrong, it's often too late in the year to fix it. Today, I'm covering exactly what's happening inside your camellia right now. The fertilizer deadline almost nobody talks about, and the pest that hides in plain sight on the underside of every leaf while it slowly weakens the plant. Before we get into it, drop your U.S. state or growing zone in the comments. Camellia care looks very different for someone growing Japonica varieties in the Pacific Northwest than for someone growing Sasanqua varieties in coastal Georgia, and I want everything here to actually apply to your climate. I read every comment. Let's go. Number 1. Your camellia is forming next year's flower buds right now, and that changes how you should be treating it this month. This is the single most important thing to understand about camellia care in summer. Camellias that bloom in fall, winter, or spring don't produce those flowers from scratch when the season arrives. The buds for that display begin forming on the plant during the current summer, months in advance, and July is right in the middle of that development window. Those buds are small right now, easy to overlook, and easy to damage without ever noticing until much later. Prolonged heat combined with dry soil during this exact stage puts real stress on developing buds, and that stress can mean fewer blooms this coming season, weaker blooms, or bud drop before the flowers ever open. This is why a camellia that looks like it's just sitting there doing nothing in July is actually in one of its most important and most vulnerable stages of the entire year. Treat July as bud building season, not downtime, and a lot of the other mistakes on this list start to make more sense. Number 2. Know whether your variety wants shade or can handle sun, because this is not the same answer for every camellia. Most camellia problems that show up as brown, papery, scorched-looking leaves in July are Sunscald, not disease, and the fix depends entirely on which type of camellia you're growing. Japonica varieties, the classic large-flowered camellias most common in American gardens, genuinely need at least partial shade through the hottest months. Direct afternoon sun scorches their leaves and buds, and that damage does not reverse once it happens. Sasanqua varieties are the exception here. They tolerate considerably more sun, including some direct afternoon exposure, and are the better choice if you're working with a genuinely sunny spot. If you're seeing tan or brown papery patches, specifically on leaves facing south or southwest, and the rest of the plant looks fine, that's sunscald from direct exposure, not a fungal problem, and no spray is going to fix it. The traditional advice among longtime camellia growers in the South is dappled light, the kind you get growing beneath a high tree canopy, because it protects the plant from scorching in summer while still allowing enough light through once the canopy thins out in winter, right when the plant needs the extra light for blooming. If your camellia is scorching every July, the long-term fix is shade, not more water or fertilizer. Number 3. Stop fertilizing by the end of July. This one has a hard deadline, and missing it costs you next year's flowers. This is the fertilizer rule most camellia content either skips or gets vague about, and it matters more here than with almost any other flowering shrub. Camellias should switch to a low nitrogen, high potassium feed by late spring, and then stop being fed entirely by the end of July. Feeding a camellia after that point pushes soft new vegetative growth at exactly the moment the plant should be hardening off and settling into building next year's flower buds instead. That late nitrogen doesn't just risk winter cold damage on tender new growth. It directly interferes with the bud development that's happening on the plant right now. If you've been feeding your camellia on a schedule through summer because it looked like it wasn't doing much, July is the hard stop. Full stop. No exceptions. An established camellia in reasonably good soil often doesn't need much supplemental feeding at all beyond that late spring application. Number 4. Water consistently, not heavily, because both extremes damage developing buds the same way. Camellia bud drop is one of the most frustrating problems growers deal with, and it has several possible causes, but water stress in either direction is one of the most common and most preventable. Too little water during a hot, dry stretch stresses the plant right as those developing buds need consistent resources to keep forming properly. Too much water, soil that stays constantly soggy, suffocates the shallow feeder roots that camellias depend on, which then limits the plant's ability to move water and nutrients up to support bud development at all. The goal is even, consistent soil moisture, not a flood and drought cycle. Check the soil a couple inches down before watering. Water deeply when it's dry, and maintain a 2 to 3 inch layer of mulch around the base to buffer soil moisture swings during hot stretches. The same mulch that's already helping keep root zone temperatures down during summer heat. Consistency here is protecting flowers you won't see for months, which is exactly why this step gets skipped by gardeners focused only on what the plant looks like right now. Number 5. Check the undersides of your leaves for T-scale, because this is the pest that damages camellias the most while staying almost completely invisible from a normal glance. T-scale is the most common and most damaging pest camellias deal with in the U.S., and it's easy to miss because it feeds specifically on the undersides of leaves, where small white, tan, or brown scale insects cluster and go unnoticed for a long time. The first sign most gardeners actually see is on the top of the leaf. Small yellow spots appearing where the insects have been feeding from underneath, with the leaf gradually losing its rich green color as the infestation progresses. Left unchecked, T-scale weakens the plant significantly, reduces flowering, and can eventually cause leaf and even branch loss. Take a few minutes every couple of weeks this summer to flip over some leaves, especially older foliage lower on the plant, and actually look. If you spot scale, remove the most heavily infested leaves where practical, and treat with horticultural oil or insecticidal soap, making sure you get thorough coverage on the undersides of the leaves specifically, since that's where the insects actually live. 2 to 3 applications spaced a week or so apart handles most infestations. This is a pest that punishes gardeners who only ever look at the top of the plant. Number 6. Check your soil pH and drainage, because camellias have specific requirements that quietly cause problems for years if they're wrong from the start. Camellias need acidic, well-drained soil, generally in the range of 5.0 to 6.5 pH, the same range that rhododendrons and blueberries need. If your soil runs more alkaline than that, the plant can struggle to take up nutrients properly, even if you're feeding and watering correctly. And the symptoms of that struggle: pale or yellowing leaves, weak growth, reduced flowering, get misread as disease or pest problems when the actual cause is chemistry in the soil. If you suspect this is an issue, a simple soil test tells you where you stand, and amending with sulfur or an ericaceous compost brings alkaline soil down into range over time. Alongside pH, drainage matters just as much. Compacted or consistently waterlogged soil suffocates the same shallow feeder roots mentioned earlier and is one of the more common causes of root rot in camellias, which shows up as general decline, yellowing, and poor vigor. That's easy to blame on the wrong cause. If your camellia has been mediocre for years, despite reasonable care, checking pH and drainage is worth doing before assuming you have a pest or disease problem. Number 7. Learn to tell Sunscald scab and T-scale damage apart. Because they look similar at a glance, but need completely different responses. Sunscald shows up as brown or tan papery patches, specifically on leaves facing south or southwest, that get the most direct afternoon sun, and the surrounding healthy tissue on the same leaf usually looks fine. This is a light exposure problem, not a disease, and shade is the only real fix. Scab is a physiological condition, not technically a disease, that shows up as corky, irregular brown growths, usually on the undersides of leaves, and it's associated with poor drainage and poor airflow around the plant. Improving both of those conditions is the actual fix, not a fungicide. T-scale, as covered above, shows up as small insects on the underside of the leaf with yellow spotting visible from the top, and it needs horticultural oil treatment specifically targeting the undersides of affected leaves. Confusing these three costs, you time treating the wrong problem while the real one continues. Spraying a fungicide on Sunscald does nothing, and shading a T-scale infestation does nothing either. Look closely at where the damage is, what the underside of the leaf actually shows, and match the treatment to what you're actually looking at. Here's your complete July camellia checklist. Remember that flower buds for next season are actively developing right now, even though there isn't a bloom in sight. Match your shade needs to your variety. Japonica wants real shade from afternoon sun. Sasanqua tolerates more. Stop all fertilizing by the end of July without exception. Water consistently rather than swinging between drought and soaking, and keep mulch down to buffer soil moisture. Check the undersides of your leaves for T-scale every couple of weeks, since it's the pest most likely to go unnoticed until real damage is done. Confirm your soil pH sits in the 5.0 to 6.5 range, and that drainage is genuinely good, not just adequate, and correctly. Tell Sunscald, scab, and T-scale apart before treating any of them, since each one needs a completely different response. Subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell, and before you go, tell me 2 things in the comments. Are you growing a Japonica or a Sasanqua? And what's your camellia actually showing you right now? Scale? Scorch? Healthy green growth? Something else? I read every single comment, and your answers shape what this channel covers next. Now go check the undersides of your camellia's leaves. That's where this month's real answers are hiding.